This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Alongside our good friend Chris Allman here, who we might give a nom de plume to, so you can, I don't want to tell people, so you can operate in the shadows.
Yeah. Feels nice to be in the guest co-hosting lead. I'm 2-1 on Royden now.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Before the show, we get to talk about things, and you get to learn fun facts from me.
Yeah.
Which you did not know that Conway Twitty's name is not Conway Twitty.
No, that'll be the thing.
I don't know what his real name was. I just threw out a fake one, but.
Yeah, when I go to bed tonight and my wife is like, hey, how was your day? I'm definitely going to lead with the Conway Twitty fact.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about work. I'm not going to talk about really anything else we talked about on the show.
Is she a fan of
She will be.
she
will be
1970s country
She will be by the time
Conway
I'm done
Twitty.
telling her about Conway Twitty's origin story.
1970s variety show host, Conway Twitty. Yeah. So, but yeah, those are the things you find out before the show.
Yeah.
Before we get into talking about college football and other frivolities of the world.
Yeah.
But today I kind of wanted to focus in on, because unfortunately there's not realignment news for us to like go and fish for views on today.
Yeah.
So we have to drill down into like some topics. There might be realignment news coming in the future.
Sure.
It's a really like sad state of affairs though when you look at, okay, UNC had a tragedy shooting that postponed it. There's a hurricane in Florida right now. That postponed it. There's college football playoff meetings going on right now, which obviously Jim Phillips has to be more focused on that.
Sure, yeah.
To make sure that the ACC doesn't get left out.
Right.
I'm not left out, but, you know, they have every conference gets their fair shake in this.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do with the Pac-12. And that may be something we talk about a little bit later in the show, even though nothing yet has really come out of that. It just started today. But I did want to talk about, there are a lot of, this new coaches week one debuts, Matt Rhule, Deion Sanders, guys around the country that have their debuts. And some of them might not even be like head coaches. Bobby Petrino makes his debut as the OC at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Garrett Riley as the OC at Clemson in a move. I think we talked about it a little bit the other day about Dabo kind of changing.
Yeah, going outside the family a little bit.
Yeah, going outside the family. So their debuts this weekend. I'm curious, Chris, and I'll give mine after you give yours, but who do you think hits the ground running the fastest of the new head coaches?
Well, if you're going to bet the chalk, you're probably going to say Luke Fickell, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's taken over it's a top-tier Big Ten program, probably top 4, right?
And look, their worst season that got the coach fired was not bad by many stretches of like other teams would be like, oh, you had a 1-5-7 year and you fired the coach? Huh.
Yeah.
We have many 5-7 years.
Sure, yeah. 5-7 would be an upgrade for some. I think if you're betting the chalk, you're going to say Luke Fickell because of the guy can coach. He's moving into an established program that probably just needs that extra little bit of juice. He's got Tanner Mordecai playing quarterback for him. So I think the chalk says that. I think that all things considered, I think Hugh Freeze is probably going to do well at Ole Miss, until he, God bless him, makes a mistake in his coaching.
Well, he's at Auburn. He was at Ole Miss.
I'm sorry, he's at Auburn.
But Hugh Freeze's problem is probably not Hugh Freeze anymore. His bigger problem is Auburn and their little brother syndrome that is out of control. Yeah,
but Hugh Freeze also does seem to find a way to make himself a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
So I think as far as like home runs, hitting it out of the park right off the bat, I don't think Coach Rhule, I'm not expecting, we know his track record a little bit is take some time and make it big.
Look, at Baylor, he had 1.5 years of bad.
Yeah.
1.5 years of bad to come back from.
Yeah.
Because that team was rolling along really well. Temple, he had a long time of bad to build.
Yes.
This is actually more akin to Temple than it is to Baylor when he took over.
Sure, yeah. Which is weird to say.
Yeah. But yeah, because Nebraska's got 20 years of walking in the wilderness, essentially.
Yes. So actually, I hear people say that sometimes. Do we count some of those Bo Pelini years as walking in the wilderness? I know they weren't the Tom Osborne years.
No, but like they weren't able to sustain that.
Sure,
They'd have a good year, and then they wouldn't again, as where, Tom Osborne and even Frank Solich were sustained. Like, they fired Frank Solich with 9 wins.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've ever, like, if you ask them in their heart of hearts, especially the people who are still around that made that decision, they're like, that was probably a bad move.
Yeah.
Because they lost their soul.
Yes. They're 20 years removed from, what are they, 22 probably, from that Rose Bowl where Miami just sent them back to the dark ages, with how bad they beat them. So, yeah, they're 20 years removed from that. I think there's probably, I don't think expectation is the right word for Deion at Colorado. I think there's a tremendous amount of interest, but I'm not sitting there thinking.
There's hype.
Yeah, there's hype. I'm not sitting there thinking, I cannot wait to watch this Colorado TCU game to see how good Colorado is. That's just not, it's just not my thought.
I'm curious to see how congealed they are.
Right.
Because when you've got 51 new players, look, Baylor's going to see a little bit of this weekend when they play Texas State. They've got like 48, 55, something like that, new players on their roster that GJ Kinney brought in.
Right.
And while those players might be better, like, it stands to reason that the players that Deion brought in Colorado, or the players that GJ Kinney brings in at Texas State, or anybody who's got a big, roster flip at a school who was wildly unsuccessful before, those players will be better. But are they good together yet? Because that's what really takes time.
Yeah, I think that is college football, college sports in a nutshell, right? Like, you can have all the stars you want in your recruiting class, but are these guys good together? I mean, case in point, Coach Drew brings in 5 stars like crazy, but he had that one team that was really good together, won a national championship.
And they transferred in at the same time. They
right.
had this, I do think that the sit-out rule helped them out. Like, that was before, like, those guys sitting out and just having, like, you can't play in games, so you have to create your own fun.
Right.
Which for Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler was, we're just going to be in the gym getting insanely good at basketball. And then sometimes all the transfers don't really work. Like, you can be good but not great. Look at Chris Beard, year 1 at Texas.
Yeah.
That team was, they were tough to beat, but I don't think they really scared anybody because, like, all the parts didn't fit the whole. And I think that's what's going to you're going to see at some of these schools. Like, Matt Rhule has a ton of transfers at Nebraska.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be better than they were a year ago because they're going to have more of a defined, policy than they did. And they're going to know, like, they knew last year Scott Frost on the way out.
Right.
Colorado was listless last year, so those schools will be better. But how much kind of depends on what you realistically expect of what is better.
Yeah. I think, so you brought up Coach Kinney at Texas State. I mean, I'm not super fluent in all things Texas State Bobcat, but I mean, there's a lot riding on him. One really, really good year at Incarnate Word, and then he gets this Texas State job. And so, they're not, Texas State's not playing the 2:30 game on CBS, but it's definitely an intriguing game just to see, are they going to score 53 points a game like he did last year?
How fast does it happen? And when you're playing a team like Baylor, which again, there's another coach debut, and Matt Pallage is the defensive coordinator at Baylor.
Right.
How quickly can he get a Dave Aranda coach defensive team back to looking like that? Because last year they didn't. They didn't have that same attitude. And what I will say that I think is going to have a bad matchup for Baylor in particular in that game is their probably weakest point of their whole team is going to be their secondary until they find some guys. And GJ Kinney's going to throw the ball 50 times.
Yeah, he's going to wing it.
So those guys without experience are going to, like, if you've never had snaps, you're about to get 50 snaps for sure, where you're going to have effort in that. So those things are all interesting to me as you look into week 1 of, debuts. Like, can Matt Rhule, I think this is really interesting, can he match the physicality of PJ Fleck? Because PJ Fleck coaches the kind of physical football that Matt Rhule really likes.
Yeah, he wants to play.
He wants to do that.
Yeah. And
first game right out of the bat, he's going to get a team that is going to block and tackle really well. They're not going to be high flying on offense. They're not going to be what Wisconsin he's going to see later in the year. They're not going to be that.
Right.
But they are going to make sure you were there playing them.
What is there can't be more than 7 or 8 people who watched Coach Rhule closer than you guys did. And so him and expectations and tendencies. What does your gut tell you about week 1 or year 1 with him there?
I think year 1's going to be interesting. I think that fans need to look at everywhere he was year 1. He's willing to take a bath on some things. Like really,
Yeah.
All right, look, we're gonna drain this out here.
Yeah. And I still know Baylor fans that are bitter about that. I know Baylor fans that think that was unnecessary. I don't necessarily agree with them.
Oh, I can tell you, like, I understand that sometimes there's opinions that you have. That's like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
That's not. I can tell you, it was
Big
absolutely.
Lebowski, is that what that was? Okay.
That was absolutely necessary because, and I dealt with this at the time. So when he took over at Baylor, I remember getting callers like, "Well, the cupboard's not bare," and I'm like, "Buddy, the cupboard is bare.
Yeah.
The recruiting class that he would have had is one guy.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that one guy was, now there were other guys in it, Charlie Brewer and all that, but the recruiting class he was supposed to be able to say, hey, I know what all these guys are, was really one guy when he got there, and that was Jalen Petrie.
Yeah.
Now, that turned out to be a great guy.
Yeah, it did.
But even still, I remember thinking, I don't know if Jalen Petrie knows what's going on here. I was kind of wondering, because we had a recruit on that they had the second commit they had. This guy committed to Baylor, and I asked him, I said, I'm curious as to why you committed here, just knowing what's going on with the coaching staff. And we knew that there was and he said, well, the coaching staff is the reason I did it. And I was like, Soki and I had this look on each other's face. We're like, I didn't want to tell him, they're all leaving, right?
Yeah.
They're not very quiet about, or they're not hiding how they feel about how this all went down.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be here.
Yeah.
Baylor's not going to bring them back, so.
I feel like I derailed you. So Coach Rhule's first year.
Anyway, so all those things happened, right? All those things happened, and they had to clean out some guys that might have been good players in the previous system, but also it's about attitude, and, he had to let some guys go. And then they were also just Art Briles even knew that his offensive line was going to be lacking that year.
Right.
He had talked about it kind of publicly. I was like, this is what we're really worried about because we don't have a lot of experience here. Mm-hmm. And then when you walk in the first day, he had 6 scholarship offensive linemen and 2 walk-ons. There were 8 guys in the room. They didn't even have to go, hey, the extra guys stand up in the back. They had chairs for everyone. Everybody could put their feet up on a chair.
That's a bad sign about your roster when you can say chairs for everyone.
Yeah. Matt Rhule tells the story of he said, all right, well, I guess you guys are running a little bit early. That's fine. I like that. When are the rest of guys going to get here? And they're like, this is it. There's not. Yeah. We're all here right now.
Yeah.
And so they had to really drill down on that. That might happen a little bit at Nebraska. Now, granted, he's got the transfer portal that makes it a whole lot easier for him to have warm bodies in a room.
Yeah.
But whether those warm bodies or not are ready to go.
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. And then you have to build something. I think he's in a situation where Trev Alberts knows that I've got to back off this guy for a little while and let him build a culture.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's what was going on at Nebraska before. Steve Peterson came in as the AD, and he's the one who fired Frank Solich, hired Bill Callahan, and then they never really got on the right track from that point on because they lost their soul.
Yeah.
And they lost who they were as Nebraska football.
Right.
And so that's what he has to let Matt Rhule build back is that attitude and the culture, which every time they were hiring somebody, they were like, well, this might reboot the culture. And Pelini might be the culture. Well, it can't be Pelini. It's going to be Mike Riley. Pelini was too harsh. We're going to get Mike Riley, who's a little bit more relaxed. And then they kind of roll through this, and then they go, okay, well, we're going to go to get Scott Frost because he's one of our great players. He's a hot coach right now. He knows Osborne. This will work. This will work. And then Scott Frost was not ready for that.
No.
Scott Frost, and I'll tell you, I think Scott Frost might be one of those guys who gets a head coaching job 5 years from now, and people are like, oh, why wasn't he that good at Nebraska? Well, now he's ready for it.
Yeah.
Now he knows.
Sure. When I was thinking about this, which coach is set up for the best run, which coach is going to make the biggest splash. I also got to think about, relatively speaking, what is success for them? You take Luke Fickell. The expectation there is that I think Wisconsin fans and supporters are going to expect him to win the Big Ten, make the playoff, and eventually compete for a national championship. But you take someone like Jamie Chadwell, right, who was really good at Coastal. Mm-hmm. Now he's at Liberty. Does he win 10 games, 2 or 3 years so that he can go get his next job? I think run is relative. Which one's going to have the most success is relative in this conversation.
I can dog on Liberty for a great many things. that have nothing to do with their sports.
Sure.
But I know Ian McCaw, the athletic director there. He was here before, and that's a great hire that he made, Jamie Chadwell.
Yeah.
Great hire. I think it's unfortunate that no one else was smart enough to hire Jamie Chadwell at a bigger school.
Did his name come up as a serious candidate at other big schools?
I think there might be this thought in him of like, well, it's cute. He did it at Coastal Carolina. But I think good coaches are good coaches. I think you need to look no further than Kalen DeBoer, who's at Washington right now.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, you look at Lance Leipold.
Yeah.
You know, how long do you have to just – I think you get real myopic with sometimes hiring. Well, this guy has to do this because you have to sell things to people. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you need to just go, okay, this is the guy.
Yeah.
This is the success he's had. We're going to give him the resources – Chris Kleiman.
I was about to use Chris Kleiman as an example.
Chris Kleiman is a great example. I don't think whatever big school in Texas hires Jeff Traylor away from UTSA when that is, will not have as much of a sell.
Right.
But that is something I would have been like, if I were A&M or Texas and I had fired my coach 1 year into Jeff Traylor at UTSA, I would have been comfortable saying like, no, this is the guy.
Really?
Yeah. No, this is the guy.
Yeah.
He understands how it works here, and with resources, he can really be something.
Yeah. I got to thinking about that. I got to thinking about what is Auburn's expectation, and it sounds like Auburn's expectation is almost going to be impossible to meet.
Well, they have unreasonable standards anyway.
Right.
Like, and it's not. And Auburn can be. I mean, look, they've had Heisman Trophy winners. They've won national title. You know, they've had a lot of great things happen at Auburn. Auburn's problem is they need to stop comparing themselves only to Alabama, because Alabama has had two of the 5 greatest coaches and maybe the 2 best coaches of all time have been there.
Right.
Nobody else can really say that. Like, you know. That's like in the top. Like nobody else can say they have 1 and 2 in Saban and Bear Bryant.
Yeah,
like now you say you had 2 great coaches. You know, Ohio State's had several.
Sure,
right?
Darryl Rhule and Mac Brown.
Yeah, Darryl Rhule and Mac Brown.
Yeah.
Look, Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier both were at Florida.
Yeah.
Ohio State, Urban Meyer is in that Venn diagram as well of successful coaches. Michigan had Lloyd Carr and Bo Schembechler. Like you've all had there's programs that have 2 great coaches, but not the 2 best at what they did during their era.
Sure, yeah.
That redefined how everybody does everything.
Yeah.
Nick Saban and Bear Bryant. So stop trying to be Alabama.
Yes.
Like you can't be Alabama. And you can't be Alabama. And if you ever are equal to them, it's going to take 100 years.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Just be Auburn and be good, and then eventually you'll start beating them more often than you were, but you're still not going to be Alabama.
So this is a genuine question. It's not like a Rhule at Paul question. There was maybe a short window in the 80s where Florida State was inferior to Miami, right?
Yeah, no, there was a.
But then, they get over the hump in 93. Bobby Bowden wins a national title, team of the 90s. Did Florida State ever have the inferiority complex, or was their confidence well beyond that?
Part of that was because Bowden built the program.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really an inferiority complex. It was they were really nothing for, from the time they became a co-ed school.
Yeah.
Outside of a couple things. Fred Biletnikoff was there. And like, is 70s movie star Burt Reynolds an alum? What do you know? Spencer for Hire, Robert Urich. Those are the things that Florida State really had. Like,
right. Ron Simmons.
Yeah, Ron. Well, that was a Bowden era guy.
That's right.
But yeah. So
I just didn't want to miss a chance to work in a pro wrestler.
We got Farouk. Yeah, we got Farouk. Okay. We're cool. So when people ask me who my favorite wrestler is, it will always be him.
It's always going to be Ron Simmons.
It's always going to be him.
Sure.
I know it's been a long time since he's actually
done
anything, but
still your guy.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So, but I think he built the attitude. So the inferiority complex wasn't really there because Florida had never really they hadn't won a national title either.
Right.
And Florida State won before they did. Miami, here's the crazy thing about Miami. They and Florida State were kind of in the same boat of building their program at the same time.
Yeah.
Schnellenberger just did it so ridiculously fast.
Super fast.
Faster
than he thought he would. No matter what the doc tells us, Schnellenberger's plan wasn't to win the 83 national title.
Yeah, worked so well.
Yeah.
And then it just created a monster there.
Right.
And look, I don't mean to say greatly. It was just this behemoth for 20 years that they had at Miami. Occasional dips, but like just behemoth that they were, and through several coaches. But Erickson and Jimmy Johnson, Erickson, Butch Davis, Larry Coker, all had really good runs there. But
I never got the impression that Florida State had that.
It was more about like let's just the three of them in egos and who's the best and all this. Florida State was well behind and still probably is in the rivalry against Florida because for years Florida was an actual football school and they had Steve Spurrier won the Heisman Trophy in '66. The best thing that Florida State could say from that era was the wide receiver award is named after one of our guys.
Sure.
Like, that's it. So there wasn't that inferiority complex. Now, I think that between the three schools, it shifts, depends on, like, it's like they pass it around.
Yeah.
Who's got the inferiority complex in this couple years.
But there is a very, there's a very specific type of inferior. It's like a historical one. And I feel like I've been with you now 2 episodes and I'm about to kind of bag on Aggie again.
No, but A&M has it with Texas.
They do.
They have it with Texas. And they're finally, we're going to talk about them, I'm sure. I guess because their rivalry's coming back, but at the end of the show. But yeah, I do think A&M has one. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And now they have one to the rest of the SEC too. Like it's there.
It's a really weird dynamic
because they haven't, and again, they haven't and their fans, I think, had justifiably be frustrated with I think I said this was Roy yesterday, the care to output quotient at A&M is higher than everywhere else. Like it is, they care more than everybody cares in everything, everything. And the one thing they care about the most, football, is the one that does not give them, that meet their care, their love appropriately.
Do you know what you're a television and movie buff. Mm-hmm. When I think about A&M Texas or Auburn, Alabama, I think about a scene from Mad Men when Don is riding down the elevator with one of his ad guys. I think, or Rosenberg may be his name. And this guy's mad because Don stole his idea, and he's just going on a rant, and he tells him, "I feel sorry for you." And Don listens to the whole thing, and the elevator dings, and he walks out and says, "I don't think about you at all." That's how I feel. Like that's what that seems like, right? Like Aggie or Auburn maybe has this really fiery, we're going to really show them and tell them. And Bama and Longhorn is just kind of like, we don't think about you at all. Is that inaccurate?
I think Texas thinks about A&M more than they would admit. And it didn't happen until they went to the SEC. That's when it happened.
Okay.
That's when it happened. Before it was like, yes, on November 26th or 27th every year, we're going to play you, but we also have someone we care about a little bit more,
right?
And that's Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Now, Texas does have an inferiority complex to Oklahoma, no matter what they say.
They do.
They absolutely do.
Is there a school in the country that doesn't have an inferiority complex?
No, there's one, maybe Alabama doesn't.
Yeah.
Because, again, they've had the 2 greatest coaches of all time, but,
everybody's got someone.
Georgia feels inferior to Alabama. LSU feel like everybody in the SEC probably has it with Alabama to some degree.
Yeah.
Florida feels it right now for Georgia terribly, because Georgia has lapped them twice over now.
Yeah.
And
by the way, note from yesterday, I had no idea Kirby Smart spent $3 million more than everyone else recruiting.
Yeah.
Boy,
it was one of those
staggering.
I couldn't believe that. It's like he's like, okay, well, who's second? All right, $3 million.
Yeah.
Can we get to 3 million?
Yeah.
And no one was like, you think that's necessary? So I found it was one of the things that was really surprising.
Yeah.
I saw I will compare it to a thing that has nothing to do with sports.
Good.
But the American military spends $850 million more per year than China.
Okay.
We spend more money than the second, maybe even more than, it might even be $8 billion. We have whatever we find out that other people spend, we're just no, we're going to. Yeah. And then you can ask, are you going to use all that stuff? I hope not. but we've got it in
Sure.
case it happens.
There you go.
Like, that's the attitude.
That's a better analogy.
That's Kirby Smart
Yeah.
right now. Do you really need it? No, but if I have it,
Yeah.
if I need it, I've got it.
Better safe than sorry.
So you have it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to ask each other questions this time.
Okay.
I've got some new ones for you.
Okay.
I might even ask you some of the ones I asked Royden yesterday.
Okay.
But
Yeah, if we get around to best football movie of all time, I feel like there was a noticeable omission yesterday.
okay, good. Well, we might start off that one.
Okay.